Hello guys, and welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to not be doing a playoff video because of course I don't want to be doing playoff videos during the playoffs. I will get to playoff videos, I'm so sorry. But today I'm going to be doing a 32 team video where I'm going to speak about the player that surprised me the most on each team. But before I get into the video, I would just like to say thank you guys so much for the support recently. It has been absolutely insane, and the fact that I am on the road to 200 and we are on the road to 200 is crazy. I never saw it getting here, and honestly, I thought I would have quit by now. I'm not gonna lie, I thought I would have, but here I am, and yeah, hopefully you guys are like, I don't know, just thank you. Thank you guys, but now let's get on to the video that I said I was doing, that you guys have clicked on the video to see, and again, that is me picking the player that has surprised me the most during the regular season. So, starting off in alphabetical order, I'm sorry Winnipeg, you're going to have to wait to the end, or just skip to the end if you want. Big if. But we're going to go to the Anaheim Ducks. And on the Anaheim Ducks, the player that surprised me the most, not shockingly at all, is 24-year-old right winger Troy Terry. Troy Terry, before the season, I had no expectations for him because the year before I figured he'd break out. He did not break out. So when it came to this year, I figured, you know what? He's kind of settled into what he's probably going to be for his whole career. I don't think he's going to get much better. And bam, out of nowhere, because this season he has put up 67 points in 75 games and a whopping 37 goals. He has led the Ducks in points this year, and man, just out of nowhere. So definitely surprised me this season was Troy Terry. But now, moving on to the Arizona Coyotes. And from the Arizona Coyotes, I had two options here. I could either go with Nick Schmaltz, let's go, or the bad option, which was Jacob Chychrun. But you know me, I gotta go glass half full, so I went with Nick Schmaltz as Arizona's most surprising player, because this season, Nick Schmaltz in 63 games has 23 goals, 36 assists for 59 points, and just like Troy Terry, is overachieving what I thought he'd be capable to do. Unlike Troy Terry, Nick Schmaltz was a very solid, debatable top 6 forward, probably top 6 forward, for most of his career, and this year, he just completely turned it up. And what I think helps him get these point totals is the fact that Arizona is just not a good team. I figured that because Arizona's not a good team, you're seeing Nick Schmaltz get more opportunity, get more ice time, but man, Nick Schmaltz has used that opportunity and ice time to his benefit because he has been playing absolutely fantastic with it, and honestly is probably going to be, could be a potential first liner for the Arizona Coyotes for the next few years, although I don't think you necessarily want him on your first line. You probably want him as more of your second line guy, but this year, great year for Nick Schmaltz. But now moving on to the Boston Bruins, and here we have our first bad surprise. And you'd think for a good team, I'd have a good surprise, but really for Boston, there wasn't many good surprises. Everybody played pretty much as expected, except for Nick Foligno. Nick Foligno this year in 64 games, pretty much a whole season, got 2 goals. And I know Boston didn't sign him to that contract that looked overpaid just for his point production. They also signed it because he's a great leader. Now, Boston does have a lot of great leaders, but Nick Foligno definitely adds to that leadership group in that Bruins locker room, although they did lose the first game of the playoffs, but that's beside the point. They'll be fine, maybe. But Nick Foligno, this year, 2 goals in 64 games is way too low, and I get that he's 34, he's getting older, but the offense drop-off this year has just been crazy. I expected it to be a little bit slower, but yeah, the contract that looked overpaid now looks really overpaid in my eyes. But now moving on to the other B team, and a team that's bad but has a good surprise, and that is the Buffalo Sabres. And part of the reason I'm wearing their jersey, not just because I have very limited jerseys, but because I think this was the biggest surprise of the teams this year, and that is Tage Thompson. Tage Thompson, maybe not the biggest surprise, but up there. Tage Thompson this year, 24-year-old right winger, who, again, he had potential, the potential was there, but it wasn't being tapped into, and last year was his best year, a career year for him at the time, but this year, out of nowhere, absolutely insane. In 78 games, he has 38 goals, 30 assists for 68 points, and not only has he completely changed the outlook of his career projection, but he's also kind of saved Jeff Skinner's reputation and helped Jeff Skinner have a great bounce-back season, because him and Jeff Skinner have been clicking on all cylinders, and Tage Thompson being this good this year, even as a Buffalo fan, is something that I did not see coming in forever. But now moving on to the Calgary Flames, and from the Calgary Flames, this player inspired this entire video topic, so I think we should say thank you. Actually, I should say thank you to you guys because I had this vote for which video topic to do. But the player on Calgary that inspired the idea to be there was centerman Sean Monahan. Holy, Sean Monahan is supposed to be a first line, maybe second line center, a top 6 guy, and this season in 65 games he has 8 goals, 15 assists for 23 points, and has been a healthy scratch for multiple games. It's absolutely insane to see the fall that Sean Monahan has had, because if we look back only as 3 years ago, as early as 3 years ago, he was over a point per game. And then, yeah, okay, Calgary started getting worse. Sean Monahan had a couple of bad seasons. But this season, I figured if Calgary's going to get better, so is Sean Monahan. Now, Calgary's gotten better, but Sean Monahan has just gotten worse, and I don't understand what's wrong, and I don't know if Sean Monahan will ever be able to reach that top 6 level again in Calgary. So, but luckily for him, he's probably going to get traded this offseason because they need room to sign Tkachuk, Gaudreau, and Mangiapane. Those are 3 expensive guys right there. And Monahan's big cap hit's going to have to go somewhere, maybe Arizona or something. I don't know. I'm sure someone will take on his contract for a price, obviously, but the fact that Sean Monahan might be traded and they might have to give up something to get rid of him is absolutely crazy to me and shows you just how poor of a season it has been for Sean Monahan. But now moving on to the Carolina Hurricanes. And from the Hurricanes, we have a good surprise here, because when they signed Frederik Andersen, the player I'm picking, I said, that's too much money. He's being overpaid, and why would you sign a goaltender who just had a career low season, who's over the age of 30, and was injured like the whole season? Why would you sign him to 2 years at $4.5 million, I think it is? Who knows? But they obviously are time travelers, because this season he's went from a career low to a career high in save percentage, because this year in 52 games he has a .922 save percentage and is in contention for the Vezina Trophy, which again, something I definitely did not see coming. And yeah, he has just had a great year when in a time where I least expected it. I saw Carolina's goaltending tandem probably going to lead to their downfall this year. Not necessarily downfall, but them achieving lower in the standings than they probably should have, but that has definitely not been the case. But now moving on to the Chicago Blackhawks. And from the Chicago Blackhawks, we have a bit of a young forward who has just not been able to live up to expectations at all, and that is Kirby Dach. Kirby Dach this year was seen as the year where we see him become that top 6 forward, helping the Chicago Blackhawks, who at the time were seen as a team that could potentially make the playoffs. That hasn't happened, but Kirby Dach also has not progressed at all, really, because in 70 games, he has 9 goals, 17 assists for 26 points, and that offensive game just isn't there yet. Hopefully yet is the word that I can use, because I'm starting to have questions about whether he'll ever reach that offensive potential. Last year, he obviously came back from wrist surgery, and he played okay, and people kind of gave him a bit of a break because he was coming back from wrist surgery. But again, this year was the year, and it just hasn't happened for Kirby Dach. And I don't know if it will, but not the season that any Chicago fan was hoping for Kirby Dach. But now, flipping the page and moving from one of the worst teams in the league to one of the best, because from the Colorado Avalanche, I have gone with another very obvious pick, Nazem Kadri. Who saw Nazem Kadri being on a 100-point pace this season? Because in 71 games, he put up 28 goals, 59 assists for 87 points. Now, he did slow down towards the end of the season, and that definitely will cause some interest in his contract talks, because I'm wondering, will he get a ton of money, or will he be paid rightfully? Maybe he'll take a discount to go to Colorado, but honestly, I think he's going to end up getting overpaid to go somewhere else. But this year, if any of you predicted to have Nazem Kadri have 100 points, I would not believe it, because the fact that Nazem Kadri was leading Colorado in scoring like most way through the season, like 3/4 through the season, is insane. And yeah, he did slow down again at the end, but we'll see how the playoffs go, and his season was definitely fantastic. But now moving on to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And from the Columbus Blue Jackets, I have gone with their captain, Boone Jenner. Boone Jenner this season in 59 games has 23 goals, 21 assists for 44 points. And what's funny with Boone Jenner is that he is like I said, he's the captain, but normally your captain puts up a lot of points. Boone Jenner was not that guy. They gave Boone Jenner the captaincy, just like they gave Nick Foligno the captaincy, because these guys are good leaders. But Boone Jenner's like, okay, I'm the captain now, so now I got to get points. And that's exactly what he's done, and that's definitely not what I thought he'd do, because I figured Boone Jenner was always kind of that grinder, kind of physical guy, gets in the corners, does all that work. Not really a 30-goal scorer, 35-goal scorer. I did not think that was what Boone Jenner was. And honestly, I think this is a career year for him, but still a fantastic year for Boone Jenner. But now on to the Dallas Stars, and another team that made the playoffs that has a bad surprise. Because when you look at Dallas, the reason they made the playoffs is definitely their younger talent. They have a lot of young talent on their team. But what they also have is a lot of veterans who are disappointing. And one of those veterans who's definitely disappointed the most this year is right winger Alexander Radulov. Radulov in 71 games only had 4 goals. And yes, he's 35, he's getting older, but 4 goals in 71 games for Alexander Radulov, who 2 seasons ago, was over a point per game, Then he had a bit of a slow year. And then last year in 12 games, he did very solid 11 points. I don't know if he was injured or what was going on there. Honestly, I wasn't paying much attention last year. I paid a lot of attention this year, and I've even started a YouTube channel. But Alexander Radulov, only 4 goals in 71 games, far lower offensive production than you should have, 22 points. This is a guy who, I get it, you're getting older, you should slow down, but it's kind of like Nick Foligno. It's just a much steeper drop than I thought it would be. But hey, it happens sometimes with players, and who knows, maybe Radulov can bounce back next season. But now, moving on to the Detroit Red Wings, and this is the team that has the only rookie on this list, actually. I don't think I gave another team a rookie. I'm pretty sure I didn't, but for Detroit, I went with Lucas Raymond, and I went with Lucas Raymond because I didn't think he was even going to make the team. I figured he'd go to the preseason camp, he'd be on the camp, he'd have the preseason, and he'd be good, but he'd spend most of the season in the AHL, maybe get his 9 games and play solid, but definitely not put up these kind of numbers and be up for the Calder. When I saw him in the Calder odds, and he was like there, I was like, I mean, it's like he was at the top. He was towards the top. And I was like, I don't know, I just don't see it. And most other people didn't either, but they definitely knew something that we didn't, or at least that I didn't, because this season, in 82 games, he played all 82. He had 23 goals, 34 assists, 57 points. Again, a rookie that slowed down towards the end of the season with points, but that typically happens. Rookies usually hit a wall where they stop producing as much points because they're not used to the full 82-game schedule in such a condensed time like the NHL is, especially this season where it's really condensed. But Lucas Raymond definitely blew the doors off of what I expected of him this season. But now, on to my favorite team. I say that every time in a 32-team video. I should probably stop. But with the Oilers, I went with Cody Ceci, and here's why. Oilers, most of the players, you say, okay, they played about as expected, because they did. There wasn't any crazy shocks, but definitely one of the players who played better than I expected was, again, Cody Ceci, because watching the preseason, I was like, this guy is horrible. He had a terrible preseason. And then last year, he had a great year in Pittsburgh, obviously, and I figured they gave him too much, and they looked into just 1 year when Cunningham signed him. I figured they just looked at that 1 year, because it was definitely a career year in my eyes, but he has proven me wrong, because this year, I think, is better than last year. In 78 games, he has 5 goals, 23 assists for 28 points, and those offensive numbers may not look great, but it's better than what he usually does, and the defense has just been amazing. He has been way more consistent defensively than I thought. I think he's actually been the Oilers' most consistent defensive defenseman. Like, yeah, he's been a very good top 4 defenseman for the Oilers this year, and yeah, you're right. Even better than Nurse, I'm saying. He's been more consistent than Nurse, I think, in all those guys. But Ceci, definitely having a great year, and I hope he can keep this up for the rest of his contract. We'll see. But now on to the Florida Panthers. And the Florida Panthers this year had a dynamic offense. 3 lines that can absolutely pummel you down with goals, and they'll score like 10 in a game. But one player that's helping them pummel 10 goals in a game is Mason Marchment. And Mason Marchment was one of those players that I did not expect to even see. Well, I guess I didn't even expect to see him in the lineup because Florida just had such a dynamic offense. And the fact that Mason Marchment this year in 54 games has put up 47 points is crazy to me. This is a guy who, when he was traded, when that Toronto trade went down, it was seen as, it was a trade. Not a big trade. I don't know. I don't think anybody thought much of it at the time. But right now you look back on that trade and a lot of things Bill Zito has done and said, that is great. But this trade, well, that is great. And Mason Marchment has performed well this year. And as I said in my career year video earlier in the season, I do think this is a career year for him. But still, what a season for Mason Marchment. But now moving on to the LA Kings, who absolutely decided to beat my Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs last night. I hate you. But I have to give it to Sean Durzi as my most surprising player. Sean Durzi this season in 64 games has 3 goals, 24 assists for 27 points, and did project to be an NHL defenseman, but I think he's definitely achieved more than what was expected, because last year, if we look at him in the AHL, his defense was good, but the offense just wasn't there very much. He put up 20 points in 39 games, and then he gets traded, obviously, again from Toronto. Toronto actually, they got rid of Sean Durzi, they got rid of Marchment, there's a few rough trades in there looking back, actually. And in this one video, there's a lot of bad trades for Toronto. But Sean Durzi, last year, he came into the AHL this year, played great, this year, played in the AHL, put up 16 points in 13 games, looked really good offensively and defensively, went up to the NHL, and his points per game in the NHL has been pretty much the same as his points per game in the AHL last year. But not only that, he is one of their better defenseman and a very good power play defenseman, and he's still very young. He still has room to improve and will be a very good core defenseman for LA in the future, which is something that, well, I figured wouldn't happen. But now flipping the page to the next team, which is, I believe, the Minnesota Wild. And from the Minnesota Wild, I had to go with right winger Ryan Hartman. There were a lot of options here. I could have gone with Matthew Boldy, but I didn't want to go with another rookie. I could have gone with Kirill Kaprizov because I didn't see him getting 110 points or whatever he's on pace to get. But I did end up going with Hartman, and Hartman in this season in 82 games has 34 goals, 31 assists for 65 points. And Hartman last year, years before, he's a third line guy, doesn't do much. But this year, he has put up a ton of points, and I do think it's partly because for most of the season, he's been playing with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, both of them having career years. Definitely Zuccarello having a career year. I think Kaprizov will be able to maintain this, honestly. He is an offensive stud, very entertaining to watch, but I do think some of Hartman's points are due to the fact that he's playing with them. But nonetheless, the points that Ryan Hartman has been able to produce this season have been shocking. But now on to the Montreal Canadiens. And the Montreal Canadiens, I went with defenseman Jeff Petry. Jeff Petry, until the season, every year was seen as, man, he gets better as he ages. From 30 to 33, you look, and his stats just get better and better and better. And last year, he had an amazing year and an amazing playoffs. And this year, it just completely fell off. In 68 games, he had 6 goals, 21 assists for 27 points. Did not have as good offensive numbers. Did not look as great defensively. And overall, as a season, it was just really rough. But under Martin St. Louis, he was very good. He looked like he got his game back because the offense was back, the defense was back, as many players look better under Martin St. Louis. But Jeff Petry was definitely one of those players, like Cole Caulfield, most affected by Martin St. Louis' presence. But Jeff Petry, as a whole season, I still figured he would do much better in both ways, especially considering that he gets better with age. But honestly, it's fine. He'll just go out and win the Norris next year, probably. But moving on to the Nashville Predators. And from the Nashville Predators, it was such an obvious pick. Roman Josi. Obviously, it's Roman Josi. Come on. Roman Josi this year was on pace to possibly get 100 points. He missed a couple games and just fell short, but come on. He was 4 points short. It was definitely possible because this season he managed to finish with 96 points, which is still way above what I expected. Now, Roman Josi normally, he had a bit of a down year last year. The year before, I think he won the Norris. And this year, I definitely think he deserves the Norris again. Even though Cale Makar, he is probably, I think, the best overall defenseman through the years. This year, I think it has to go to Roman Josi. Even though in the future, again, I think Cale Makar will be the best defenseman. This year has to be Roman Josi's year. The amount of offensive numbers this guy's managed to put up on a team that isn't even in the top half of the league in offense is crazy. Because, again, Florida's not an offensive team. He's not in Edmonton, he's not in Toronto, he's not any of those teams that can put up points. He's on Nashville. He's on the Nashville Predators, a pretty defensive-minded team. And yeah, the fact that he's been able to do this is crazy. But now, on to the New Jersey Devils. And we have yet another defenseman, because from New Jersey, I have gone with Dougie Hamilton. Now, I didn't go with Dawson Mercer, but Dougie Hamilton this season in 62 games has 9 goals, 21 assists for 30 points. And not only has the offensive side of things been disappointing, but so has the defensive side of things been disappointing. And one thing I have to say for Dougie Hamilton is that maybe it could be the coaching, it could be something, because a lot of people in New Jersey, from what I'm aware of, aren't the biggest fan of Lindy Ruff, and I can understand a firing. I don't think he's the right coach for New Jersey, and I don't necessarily think he's the right coach for Hamilton, although Hamilton did deal with some injuries throughout the year. Before those injuries, his stats were pretty solid, but he definitely fell off when he came back, and as a whole, this season was not what you'd think a $9 million defenseman would play like. But now, moving on to the New York Islanders. And from the New York Islanders, we have another defenseman, because from the Islanders, let me just say, there were no shocks, really. Everybody on the Islanders pretty much played as they should. As bad as they did and didn't make the playoffs, there weren't really any surprises. Like, you could say this guy played a bit below expected, this guy played a bit better, mostly below. But there was one player that I guess I could consider a surprise, and that is Noah Dobson. Noah Dobson, some people expected him to break out for sure. I kind of did, but again, he's kind of the biggest surprise on this team, because in 80 games, he had 13 goals, 38 assists for 51 points. And yeah, Dobson has just been great, again, putting up good numbers on a team that's very defensive. Like I was saying, Nashville's defensive. You should watch the Islanders, because they are very defensive. And Noah Dobson, under this very defensive, Barry Trotz coach team, has put up good numbers, and I believe he's running their power play. But yeah, he has broken out into a good defenseman and should be a top pairing. Maybe he probably is capable of being a top pairing defenseman in the future, and I think he's already ready to be a top pairing defenseman. But now, moving on to the New York Rangers, and from the New York Rangers, I had a couple options here. Again, like Arizona, I had a good option and the bad option, but with the Rangers, the good option was Kreider, the bad option was Kakko. Come on, we thought Kakko would break out, but I've ended up going with Chris Kreider. I'm the glass half full kind of guy, gotta keep it positive. And with Chris Kreider this season, in 81 games, he scored 52 goals and was one of the top players in goal scoring and the top player in power play goal scoring. And I'm interested to see how he does tonight in the playoffs. Who knows? By the time this is posted, I will know if the Rangers won that game and if Chris Kreider scored a hat trick. Watch him score a hat trick, and then we'll look back on this and be like, wow. But this season, nonetheless, an amazing season for Chris Kreider. And that's how you perform after getting a big contract, because he got that big contract. He had a bit of a rough year. You know, things weren't looking great. Obviously, $6.5 million, that's a lot of money. But this year, he's managed to make that contract look like a steal. Whether he continues to do that, I don't care. But this season makes that contract look amazing. And yeah, that's how you should play after getting a huge contract extension. But now, on to the last player that I have on this side of the page. And that is, on to the last team that I have on this side of the page, and that is the Ottawa Senators. And from the Ottawa Senators, I have gone with 24-year-old right winger Drake Batherson. Now, Drake Batherson this season had a huge breakout season. Last season, he played solid, and I expected him to get a little bit better, maybe be a good top 6 forward, but this year, again, looks like a first-line guy. In 46 games, he had 17 goals, 27 assists for 44 points. He missed a good amount of the season due to a leg injury, and yeah, when he came back, he wasn't destroying the world like he was before, where he's getting over a point per game, but he was still playing very good and still doing much better than I thought he was capable of doing. But now, flipping the page to the Philadelphia Flyers. And from the Philadelphia Flyers, come on, they had a rough season. It's going to be a bad surprise, and that is James Van Riemsdyk. And there are a lot more players I could have gone with Philadelphia. It's not like James Van Riemsdyk's the only guy who's disappointing. You got Joel Farabee, you got Claude Giroux, and I could go on and on and on, but I won't because I don't think I can. But James Van Riemsdyk this year is the one I focused on because really, he has a huge contract, and it already looked overpaid, and he normally kind of justifies it a little bit, but this year, not even reaching the 40-point mark did not justify it at all, and really speaks just to how Philadelphia's season went, because yeah, it was a very rough season for Philadelphia. Everything that went wrong did. But now moving on to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and from the Pittsburgh Penguins, I have gone with all-star playoff performer Tristan Jarry, and Tristan Jarry this season, in 58 games, put up a .919, and what makes this so surprising? Tristan Jarry's been a good goalie for a while. Well, last season and the playoffs mainly, in the playoffs he looked horrible. It was insane how bad Jarry looked. The glove hand, they pretty much lost that series because of Tristan Jarry. Pretty much. The goaltending was that bad. But this year I was like, okay, they need to fix the goalie in the offseason. They need to rework it, get rid of Tristan Jarry, maybe through trade, or do something, sign another goalie, something. And they didn't. I was like, okay, you better hope he has a bounce back season. And that's exactly what he's done, putting up great numbers this year. And now we're back at the point where it's the playoffs, and tonight also plays the Rangers, and we'll see how he does. It'll be interesting to see. But this season was far better than I expected because I did not see a bounce back season coming for Tristan Jarry. But now on to the San Jose Sharks. And from the San Jose Sharks, I have gone with Alexander Barabanov, yet another player who played on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Man, what's wrong with the Maple Leafs? But Barabanov this year in 70 games had 10 goals, 29 assists for 39 points. And last year under Toronto, did play for Toronto, didn't look good at all. 13 games, I think he had 1 assist, but then he went to the San Jose Sharks for a very short amount of time. In 9 games, he put up 7 points. And I was like, okay, that's a good streak. I don't think he's capable of keeping that up. You see players go on runs all the time, short little runs. It was 9 games, right? But he comes into this season, has fit like a glove with that San Jose team, playing on their top 6 consistently. And yeah, Alexander Barabanov has just been a very solid forward for the Sharks this season. But now moving on to the Seattle Kraken. And the Seattle Kraken were another team that was really easy to find a pick for. Really, really easy. And from Seattle, I went with goaltender Philipp Grubauer. Philipp Grubauer this season has been horrible. In 55 games, he has a .889 save percentage. We're reaching Carter Hart last season territory. Not quite, but we're getting there. And this season, right, they signed him to that huge contract. It's like, okay, he's going to be the starter. And I was on board with that. I was like, I like Philipp Grubauer. The term might be a little long, but I like Grubauer. The advanced analytic people did not, but I did. And the advanced analytic people were right, because this year his stats have been horrible. He has some of the worst advanced analytics again in the league, and maybe Colorado should be happy that they didn't sign him to another contract, because yeah, it's been very rough with Seattle. Now, he has been playing on Seattle, so that's kind of another thing that maybe I can kind of give him, I guess, that he's playing on Seattle, because they're horrible. But yeah, Grubauer has not been good. But now moving on to the St. Louis Blues, and from the St. Louis Blues, I've picked 22-year-old centerman Robert Thomas. Robert Thomas this year in 72 games put up 20 goals, 57 assists for 77 points, and really, he has broken out far more than I thought he would, as many players on this list have. But with Robert Thomas, it was okay. He had a good year, right? Last year, a horrible year, and nobody thought he'd keep that up. Everybody knew he'd do better, and everybody knew that when St. Louis signed that 2-year, $2.8 million contract, it would look great. And yes, it has, because this year, again, he has just been putting up points like it's nothing, and he's been one of the St. Louis top scorers, maybe the top scorer actually. But yeah, a great season for Robert Thomas. But now moving on to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and from the Tampa Bay Lightning, you might expect me to go Steven Stamkos, but no, I went with left winger Ross Colton, because Ross Colton, when he came into Tampa Bay, played solid. You know, he was a solid fourth liner, and that's what Tampa does. They always find guys who can come in and play. I don't know how, but they do. But this season, in 79 games, Ross Colton has put up 22 goals, 17 assists for 39 points, which is far more better offensive numbers than he put up last year. But what's also impressive about those totals is that he's only getting like 12 minutes and a half of ice time. He's getting such little ice time and doing so much with it that it's just crazy. And he's one of the reasons that Tampa has not missed that third line as much as maybe it seems. Like, you think that after getting those 3 great third liners, they all leave, that it would hurt, but no. And Ross Colton is definitely a big part of that. But now moving on to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And from the Toronto Maple Leafs, I simply just went with Pierre Engvall. Pierre Engvall has put up a good year. Not much to say about him. Normally, he's just a guy who puts up fourth line numbers, does okay. But yeah, this year he's been solid and fit in with the Leafs really well. But now on to, yeah, that was a short Leafs one. But now on to the last 4 teams that are left. We have the V's and the W's. And starting off the V's, we have the Vancouver Canucks. And from the Vancouver Canucks, I went with star player JT Miller, because JT Miller this season in 80 games has put up 99 points. And before I get into the rest of this and why he's here, let me just say, that must suck. It's 99 points. That's 1 away, and I don't think he's ever going to hit it, but he's 1 away from 100. But anyway, Miller this year having a great year, and what's funny is when he came to Vancouver, he looked really good. Next season, a little bit of a down year, but really was playing really solid for Vancouver in his time. But this year, blew up. He's just been amazing, and he's still only 29, so there could be another couple years of this production, but I just don't see him hitting 100 points again, if I'm being honest. But now on to the Vegas Golden Knights, and from the Vegas Golden Knights, I went with Chandler Stephenson. On a team that had a ton of negatives, my biggest surprise was actually a positive, because Chandler Stephenson this year in 79 games had 21 goals, 43 assists for 61 points, and when they picked him up from Washington, nobody really thought much of it. Like, cool, you add some depth, alright. But over the years, he's progressively gotten better, and this year, that continued, because this year, with a whole ton of injuries, with Mark Stone being out, with Pacioretty, and Eichel also technically out at one point, although he was out before, but still out, Chandler Stephenson had an opportunity. Chandler Stephenson got more ice time, got to play on that first line, and yes, he did do a lot with that opportunity, and played very well this season, putting up numbers that I honestly don't think he will put up again. But now onto the Washington Capitals, and from the Washington Capitals, we have another positive. I feel like there's been a lot of positive surprises, but honestly, sometimes you need some positive surprises, and it's better than Winnipeg's, I guess. Winnipeg has a negative surprise, spoiler. But for Washington, I had to go with Evgeny Kuznetsov, because Evgeny Kuznetsov, unlike Chandler Stephenson, who was progressively getting better, as Kuznetsov got older a little bit, he's not even that old, but every year it was just getting down, a little bit every year. And this year he completely revolted right back up. With Nicholas Backstrom out the season, again, injuries helping a player, I guess, Evgeny Kuznetsov got time to play with Alex Ovechkin. And yes, he did make a ton of use with that time, because he actually got 54 assists in those 79 games, which I'm sure, I don't even need to check the stats. I guarantee you a lot of those are because of playing with Alexander Ovechkin. I'm sure he passed it off to him. Bam, one-timer in the net. Oh my god, what a play by Evgeny Kuznetsov. But Kuznetsov has really looked great this season at a time where I thought that he was going to continue slowly falling down until he's kind of just found his new place in the Washington Capitals lineup or elsewhere, because there was a time when people thought that Washington was going to trade him. But now on to the last team that I have. And the last team, I figured we'd ended on a negative note. I guess I figured that it'd probably be better to end on a positive note. But I guess I can give a shout out for a positive note to Eric Comrie, who was a pleasant surprise for Winnipeg, but sadly he didn't play a lot of games. The goaltender who did play a lot of games for Winnipeg and was not a great surprise was Connor Hellebuyck. Connor Hellebuyck this season, it's not that he was bad, it's just that he was okay. And the problem with him just being okay is that he's not supposed to be just an okay goalie. He's a Vezina winner just a couple years ago, and he was good last year, and this year he's supposed to carry the momentum into the Central Division, help Winnipeg, who I thought would be a good team, make it to the playoffs, and that just, again, it hasn't happened. Eric Comrie looked better than Connor Hellebuyck for the most part this season, which is really surprising, but I'm sure he'll bounce back. It's just this season was definitely an off one for the entire team of the Winnipeg Jets, and an off season definitely for Connor Hellebuyck. But thank you guys for watching. If you are still here, I hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, let me know what you guys thought and who you thought was the most surprising player on your favorite team, or any team. I don't really care. If you think there's a pick that I made wrong, then let me know in the comments. But yeah, so that's the video. We're at the outro now. I always struggle with the outro. It's kind of like LA, you know? I struggle with the intro and I struggle with the outro. The stuff in the middle's okay, but the outro and the intro, they're rough. But yeah, so I guess I don't know what I'm going to do next. I eventually plan on talking about playoff surprises. I eventually plan on doing a round 1 review, reviewing the playoffs or previewing round 2 or something, but so that I can do some more playoff content. But other videos I've been thinking about are like, I don't know, looking at the 2022 first, what's it called? Free agent class. Looking at the free agent class. I was going to say first class. The free agent class for the NHL this year, and maybe even like looking at what's next for the Vegas Golden Knights is another thing. That's probably what I'm going to do next, is the Vegas, and then I'll move on to some playoff stuff. And yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. But again, thank you guys for watching if you are still here. Oh god, I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I've been good enough that I will see you in the next one. See you, boys. Oh wait, what am I doing? I have to put the thing up to me. Alright, there we go. I'm going to be watching Florida, Washington. We'll see how that goes.